Hey, what's going on, everybody? In today's video, I just want to discuss XPath. So I went ahead and created a sample web page. Let me just go ahead and increase the width here. For simplicity, I named everything div1 from div1 to div4 for simplicity's sake, so that we will be able to follow along. So the one thing that you would know in your browser when you need to get an XPath of an element, you would just go ahead and say inspect. And then from this, you would then say copy xpath. Now, to go ahead and test this, let me just go ahead. To go ahead and test this, let's just do this. And you paste your copied xpath. So this is what you would normally get when you copy from the browser. So when you click it, and then you have your result there as an input. When you hover over it, it highlights the input, the submit button that you got the XPath for. But the real question is, what does that mean? So if you can look here, I have four main divs in 4 different colors. And then within these divs, there's an inner div which is gray light color. And then you've got the input, username input, the password input, as well as the submit. And they are all the same within all these divs. So what this means is, if you can go ahead and say X, excuse me. So what you are saying is, within, let's try to locate this guy, this username here. So you are saying, within my HTML document, on the body, within my body element, so now we've got 4 divs. This is div 1, div 2, div 3, div 4. So we want to get this guy inside div 3. So you'd go ahead and say div 3, and within div 3, there's another div, which you then say div, and within this div, this is the guy that you're trying to get. So you would say then, this is an input, and how many inputs do we have? 1, 2, 3. So you would say input number 1, and you'd say number 1. Excuse me. So that's how you get the XPath. It's like an exact coordinate within your HTML page. So if you can go ahead here and click enter, and you hover over your input, you can see that here is highlighted. When you hover over this input, it tells you that this is the exact path of this input. It's called an absolute XPath. So you are going straight to where that input is located using this path, right? So, and that works especially in a situation like this. These are not unique. These are all the same throughout this document. There's no ID attached to these. They are all the same. If you can look at this, it's type password. They all of type password and type email, and then it's just submit button. So the other thing that we can look at is, say, a relative password, a relative XPath, which in this sense would be a bad idea to use. So for a relative XPath, we would say then, if we want to locate the same element here, we can just say, okay, we're trying to locate this guy, double slashes instead of a 1, and the element type. What are we looking for? The type of element, which is an input. Okay, if you can look here, it has 12 inputs, 3, 6, 9, 12. So you say input, and inside the input you say type equals what is the type there? I think it's an email. Okay, sorry, let's say email, right? So add type is email, right? So this is telling you that it has 4 inputs of type email. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the problem is the DOM works like this: top down, from left to right. So if you can look at your first one here, if you press enter, your first one here, if you hover over it, it's gonna be this one. So from the top, go in there. So your second one would be this one, your third would be this one, your fourth would be this one. So when you're using Selenium or anything while you're trying to locate an email element, it would then interact with this one because it will choose the first one that it encounters. So this one, unlike using the absolute XPath, the relative XPath would just grab the first element that it comes across on the DOM, and your first element would be this one because they go sequentially. So they would go like this, from left to right, up to down. So for instance, if we're looking at the submit button, you would say, okay, I want my submit button on the div 4. You would then say, okay, on div 4, let's go HTML body and div 4, and inside div 4 there's a div, and what are we trying to get? The third input. And as soon as you type, you see the suggestions here that are telling you that, okay, we've got 3 input, and inside the body, how many divs do we have? We've got 4 divs, and you want the 4th div. And on the 4th div, what do we have? We have div, which is 1 div, and then we've got 3 inputs. So the input that we're trying to get is the submit input, which is the 3rd input. And then if you go ahead and click this one and press enter, when you hover over this input, it shows you that this is a submit input button. So this is using the absolute XPath. You go in directly where your element is, and then this type is using the relative XPath. So it's just looking in the DOM, and then it'll interact with the first thing that it finds that matches this description. So understand the difference between the two. This situation here is very bad for a relative XPath. You would use an absolute XPath. And where you know that your element is unique, you would then use a relative XPath. So there might be many instances where you want to use a relative XPath, but this one here is quite bad for a relative XPath. So I do hope you understand what I was trying to teach and guide you guys through. I do hope you understand the difference between a relative and absolute XPath, and you understand where the XPath comes from, especially when you go to the browser and say, when you go here and say inspect, and you go on the developer tools here and say copy element, you do understand where the browser copy XPath. You do understand where the browser gets this. This is the same as going, root XPath, HTML and the body and the div and like I just explained. I do understand where you're getting these, and I do understand, why you should be using these, and instead of relative xpath. So I do hope this video was helpful, guys. I do hope it was beneficial, and I do hope you do understand the difference between a relative and absolute xpaths, and I do hope you understand where those copy from xpath comes from the developer tools. Thank you, guys. Please like, comment. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. It has been fun for me. See you on the next video. Cheers for now, guys. Goodbye.